What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up on a Monday morning, Labor Day. Anthony, everyone else is off today, but you and I, we're grinders. So we're here, and we're just going to push through this thing, man. 2 out of 3. Phillies lose over the weekend to the Milwaukee Brewers. And I don't know about you. I mean, we texted a little bit back and forth over the weekend. And listen, I was busy. It was a holiday weekend. We had my daughter's second birthday party on Saturday. Game was on Peacock yesterday. It was kind of like in and out. I didn't like live and breathe it this past weekend. But I think my sense coming away from it is this. It's like, and I know I tweeted this out after the game. You know, baseball, things are never quite as bad as they seem. Things aren't as good as they seem. And so for me, I didn't love what I saw this weekend, but I just don't know if I'm tired or if it's a lack of energy or enthusiasm or what, but I'm just kind of like, whatever. We move forward. Where are you at right now?
Yeah, well, I watched every pitch of all 27 innings this past weekend in Milwaukee. And even though they lost 2 out of 3, I actually kind of came away feeling okay about this and feeling a little bit better than maybe I thought. And there are things that were certainly concerning, especially Aaron Nola's start on Saturday, and we'll get into that. But I felt like there were some things that really stood out to me that were I had concerns about, and they kind of just came together and said, okay, I think that my concerns are starting to be a little bit less or have gone away entirely. And I'll tell you what those 2 things specifically, and we can break them down eventually, get some conversation on it. But the 2 things specifically, one, they continue to hit against good pitching. And 2, I am a little bit more confident in the bullpen. Even though it wasn't the greatest weekend for the bullpen, there were a couple of things about this weekend with the bullpen that made me go, I think they're going to be okay. So, all that being said, losing 2 out of 3, they were an Alec Bohm fielding error away from winning 2 out of 3. I think that's about as good of a 2 out of 3 loss as you could possibly have had against a red-hot Milwaukee Brewers team.
Yeah, like I look at it, Milwaukee's coming into the series. They're playing pretty good baseball. They stumbled a little bit against the Cubs last week, but Cubs have been playing pretty well too. Tight games, low-scoring games. And I kind of said it on Fridays. Like, I think the Phillies are probably going to lose 2 out of 3 in this series. So when you have an expectation, like you want to see the Phillies continue the momentum that they built on that homestand. But like, it's baseball. You're not going to win every series. And I think when you take that macro view and you say, ball came off the bat Friday night in the 8th inning at 85 miles an hour. It had a hit expectancy of like 230, right? And Alec Bohm doesn't make a play. And you said it. You win the series if that play gets made. And there are, as you kind of go through the details, some things that you don't love. Like, I don't feel great about the bullpen right now. I don't feel like any one of those guys is truly in that rhythm. We've seen some encouraging things from Sir Anthony Dominguez here the past couple days. But you're still kind of holding your breath a little bit. Kimbrel good in the 9th yesterday. Like there's some positives, but I don't think that any one of those guys is picking up the baseball right now and you say like he's absolutely going to do his job. And they've got time to kind of get their footing and establish that moving forward. The problem that I have, and you said we're going to talk about it, and of course we're going to talk about it, is Aaron Nola on Saturday night. I hated everything about this start. And I've tried to be really fair with him this year. In the past, I think I've probably, and I always say this, right? I'm always like, I've always been a little bit hard on him. To be honest with you, I think people have gotten carried away this season with the way that they talk about Aaron Nola just being this like useless bum of a pitcher who's never going to be good again. Like, we don't know that. Has he struggled this year? He has. There's no question about it. And does that really bring into question what you do with him beyond this season, given the contract situation? Absolutely. That's all fair game. But I was so encouraged by what I saw over those last 2 starts in August. I was like, okay, maybe he's finally turning the corner here. And then Saturday night, horrible loss on Friday. You come out, you get the Schwarber leadoff homer again. They're up 2-0. You feel like this is such a typical Phillies response to come right back and show the balls after a terrible loss. And then he wilts. And I don't think that word is unfair. Like, he wilted. He had no command. His velocity was down. He knew he was beat. He looked absolutely defeated on the mound Saturday night. And it's almost like, to me, any positive momentum that was made in those two prior starts was completely eliminated, because I'm right back to where I was 3 weeks ago, which is, I just don't know what this guy's going to give me anytime he picks up the baseball. And considering the bar is like trying to win a World Series, I don't feel great about that in the playoffs. Is that unfair?
No, not at all. I think that the Phillies are going to have to really consider in October a plan that incorporates a quicker hook for Aaron Nola than you would normally have. There's no doubt in my mind he's still starting game 2, regardless of what happened on Saturday night. But this is now, 5 of his last 7 starts where he has not even gone 6 innings. And the one thing that you could always count on Nola for was that length, going 6 or 7 innings in almost every start. And even if it wasn't a great start, if he was going 6 or 7 innings, he was probably limiting the other team to 4 runs, even in a not great start. And so you sit there and go, okay, that's not good enough, but it's also not killing us. But if you can't go 6 or 7 innings and you're giving up 4 or 5 runs, or as it was Saturday night, you give up 7, then your purpose in the rotation isn't nearly as valuable. And so the Phillies probably have to think of it as, we have to have a guy, whether it's Lorenzen or Sanchez or Walker or whoever they decide that they're going to use as their piggybacks in the postseason, ready to roll early in an Aaron Nola start. And it's crazy to think that, but that's really where the Phillies might have to be. Now, that doesn't preclude the fact that Aaron Nola might give you good Aaron Nola, and then you don't have to worry about it and say, great, perfect, this is exactly what we would hope for out of this guy. But whereas in the past, you probably try to let him fight his way through a bad inning or struggling through an inning, you say, okay, he'll get it, he'll figure it out. Maybe now you don't. Now he has that inning like he had in the second inning, and it starts to get away from him, and you're like, all right, that's it. Move to the next guy. And I think that's probably what the Phillies have to look at for October as a possibility.
Great point, and it's something I had written down here. It's this idea of, okay, so the Phillies by volume have a surplus of starting pitchers. I don't know that you feel great about any one of them, but in a way, is that almost like a hidden strength? Because we keep talking about who's the game 2 starter, who's the game 3 starter. There's a world where you may need all of these guys. I mean, if Aaron Nola goes out and okay, it's the 3rd inning and he's leaking oil, you have not earned the right to face that extra batter, to try to work yourself out of this jam. Like, we've got to pull the cord and go to the next guy. And maybe that is the way that this thing is setting up, and it's something that I've mentioned multiple times here over the past few weeks. I just, it's about the standings. It's about keeping pace, staying ahead of the Cubs. And, look, Chicago goes to Cincinnati and they split a 4-game series. The Phillies were sort of fortunate in a way that since we last talked, they didn't lose any ground. I mean, both the Cubs and the Phillies lost 2 out of 3 beginning on Friday. So they didn't lose any additional ground. They still have that 2.5 game lead over the Cubs for the top wild card spot. It's about the standings. It's about the magic numbers and counting down the days, but we're also trying to learn things about this team that maybe we didn't previously know, or we're trying to reaffirm things that we've already suspected. And this weekend, I didn't really get anything new other than maybe a little bit of a change on how I feel about Aaron Nola. Like, the bullpen still looks to me like it's finding its way. There's some good, there's some bad. You see the resilience again. Like, I almost feel like it almost feels like corny to talk about it, but like you saw this team in basically all 3 games this weekend. Friday night, they come back, they get the huge home run by Turner. Like, what a moment. They just are never out of it. And you're like, this team has like a special feel. And then the game gets wrecked in the 8th by Alvarado and Bohm. Not great. But then Saturday they come back like right out the chute. Boom, they hit you in the mouth. Like we're on to the next one. Then Nola sort of implodes. They're out of the game. They make the late surge late, right? Like,
and had a chance to tie the game in the 9th inning.
Yeah. And you're like, damn, these guys are never out of it. And then yesterday you're getting no hit for 5 innings against, Wade Miley, who's having an okay year for them, but come on. Yeah. And you're like, they're going to get swept. And lo and behold, they come back. Castellanos with the RBI double, the back-to-back home runs in the 7th inning, and the bullpen does the job. Like, this is a tough team. This is a resilient team, and we know that. But that's nothing new. So that's why I think for me, losing 2 out of 3, not a big deal. It's not a huge deal in the standings. This was one of the few hard series that they had in September, whatever. In a way, like they're treading water, and if you have the lead, then cool. But the Nola thing is a huge concern for me, and it's just impossible to objectively look at this thing and come out of it and say like, wow, I feel great about that right now.
Well, I'll tell you something that's no one's even mentioned yet, Bob, and I think it's kind of important to point out, just to kind of give you a sense of where the Phillies are with Aaron Nola. And they won't say it. You even heard Thompson trying to blow smoke by saying that he didn't think Nola was as bad as his outing was. And, even credit to Nola, he's came out and said, I stink, in that game. I was terrible. But look at how they have the rotation set up. So Aaron Nola's next start is against Miami at home next weekend. He's not scheduled to start against the Braves in a 4-game series. Then he pitches in St. Louis. Not scheduled to start in Atlanta against the Braves in a 3-game series. So you're going to go 7 games against the Atlanta Braves, and Aaron Nola won't start any of them.
What do you think about that? Like, so there's the idea.
What does that tell you?
Well, what does it tell you? Does it tell you that it's the luck of the draw? Does it tell you that they want to put him in a position to be successful where he maybe builds that confidence back up? We've seen this before, by the way, where Aaron Nola has like missed series of great significance against better teams. And it's like, oh, look, like we went through this a couple weeks ago. Remember when he had those 4 straight starts? And I was like, man, like not only has he been bad, but like look at the competition that he's been bad against. If you go back and look, I mean, a lot of these starts, his blow-up starts have come against really bad offenses. So do you think that they did this by design where they're like, listen, we need to just get this guy away from elite offenses? Like, what are you making?
It's weird because he's better against the good offenses than he is against the bad offenses. It's like, if you look at I put that in my story the other day. Yeah. He actually has better numbers against the top 10 offenses in baseball than he does against the bottom 20. So it's wild. There is the one caveat though. And I'm saying that this is just going to be how it's setting up, because Thompson has said that they're going to stick to a 6-man rotation with the off days. So Thursday being an off day and next Thursday being an off day, they could, if they wanted to, reconfigure how the rotation goes so that he does pitch both those series. If you stick to the 6-man rotation, he is scheduled to pitch Saturday against Miami and then Friday the 15th against St. Louis. But with the off days, he technically could pitch Friday against Miami, which would get him into the Atlanta series, and then he would be lined up to pitch against Atlanta again in Atlanta. So I want to put that caveat out there that if they don't stick to the 6-game plan or 6-pitcher plan, that he could end up pitching in those series. But Thompson has said that was the idea, especially because of the doubleheader. So we'll see. But yeah, it does say something to me. If he doesn't pitch against the Braves in either series, it says something to me that they're going to make his final 4 starts of the year be Miami, St. Louis, Mets, and Pittsburgh. Like, and not pitch in either of the Braves games. That does say a little bit of something to me.
So one of the stars of the show yesterday that sort of helped them salvage this series to some degree was JT Realmuto, and his performance over the weekend just further accentuates one of the most bizarre splits that I've seen from a baseball player, at least in a Phillies uniform, in quite some time. And it's something that we've alluded to a little bit on this show, something that other people have talked about as well. But Over the weekend, 3 games, JT Realmuto goes 4 for 9, reaches base in 6 out of 11 plate appearances. And it's so weird. When you look now at his season and where he's at, there's just been this sense all year about how bad JT Realmuto's been and how he's killing them. And if he were himself, this offense would be in an entirely different category. Like, it wouldn't just be this top 10-ish type offense, but all of a sudden now you're talking about a top 5-6 offense. You look at the numbers, and a lot's been made about the home road splits, and I guess we can start there, but I just want to throw this out there first. 224 plate appearances at Citizens Bank Park this season. Realmuto is hitting 201 with a 601 OPS. He's homering once every 44.8 plate appearances. 237 plate appearances on the road. 308, 963 OPS, homering once every 19.8 plate appearances. I have more, but we'll start here. He has, over the last month or so, turned it on. He's hovering around 300. OPS is in like the mid 800s. He's sort of doing exactly what he did last year. It just doesn't seem like it. That's the thing. Like, he got hot when Bryce Harper got hurt last year and then was the team's MVP. His numbers have been like really good here post All-Star break, and yet it feels like he's a killer, and not in a good way, in the middle of this lineup right now. Like,
yeah.
What's your initial sense of this?
It's so weird, Bob. First of all, both of his home runs this weekend were two of the best home runs I've seen this year by anybody. He hit the scoreboard in center field twice. I mean,
443 feet yesterday, 107.9 miles per hour off the bat.
And the one on Saturday didn't go as far. It was 5 feet shorter, but it was like 110 off the. It was like some ridiculous number off the bat. Anyway, the reason why it feels like he's not doing what you've outlined is because they've been home the entire month of August, where he doesn't hit. If there was more of a spread, right? If there was more of a spread of these road games, which is weird, and I don't understand it. I mean, the only thing I could say is just maybe he's not seeing the ball as well off of the batter's eye in Citizens Bank Park as he does in other stadiums. Maybe it's just not a good, eyeball thing for him. I have no other way to. I mean, how else do you answer that? Like, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is you're right. The guy actually has been better than we think offensively over the course of the second half of the season so far. And if that continues, and if he can just step up his home game just a hair, I mean, he doesn't have to be 302 at home, but if he could be 250, 240, 250 at home, I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be really, really good. I just don't understand why that's the case.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, really, if you look at his numbers historically, like at Citizens Bank Park, even with this year factored in, he's hit 272 in Philly with an 826 OPS. Before this season, you figure he was probably in the 280s or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. And
right,
like, it's not like he's never hit at home. It's not like he's never had success at Citizens Bank Park. But this year, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the way that the ivy's sitting out there or the way that the red on the brick is out in center field, the batter's like, I have no idea what's going on, but he just hasn't been able to figure out. But it gets even more bizarre when you look at how he relates to other guys in this lineup. Like, we all keep thinking like, oh man, JT Realmuto is just sinking them. Listen to this. He has a 785 OPS right now. That's better than Alec Bohm. It's better than Nick Castellanos. It's better than Bryson Stott. When you look at Phillies position players in terms of WAR, which I know is a little bit of a flawed metric, but only Bryson Stott has more WAR accumulation than JT Realmuto this year. Like, in some ways, like, he's been one of their best players. And we just look at him and say, Jesus, like, and I'll tell you what it really comes down to. Yes, it's the home road stuff. And yes, they've been at home a ton lately and he hasn't produced at home. But to me, like, you dig a little bit deeper, and I put this in my newsletter today, Red October Philly /subscribe, right? I put this in the newsletter. He is hitting 206 in 107 plate appearances with runners in scoring position this season. 206. He has not hit one home run with runners in scoring position. He's hit 17 home runs this year with either nobody on base or a runner on first. Not one with runners in scoring position. He has come up in a lot of big spots and he has not produced. It hasn't been about the overall high-level numbers. It's been about situations. And he has not had a lot of big moments this year, and he has not come through in a lot of big at-bats. And I think that is why we or most people feel the way they do about JT Realmuto's season right now.
Is it possible that he's got, and I say this with love about our good friend, that he's got Russ Joy syndrome?
I can't wait to see where you go with this.
He's got 4 kids under 5 at home. And that's not saying that, that's a tough thing to deal with. I'm not just trying to sit here and make light of it. I mean,
this is what I'm clipping to social media today. I'm going to do a Kyle Pagan on you and just take the weirdest, most awkward thing that you say on the show and then blast it all over Twitter.
I'm just saying, when you're home and you have, look, I had 3 kids. They weren't all within 5 years. So it's not nearly as crazy as what Russ goes through and what JT's and his wife, Alexis, has to be going through. I mean, 4 kids under the age of 5. Bob, you have 2 and you know what it's like, right? I mean, I'm not trying to sit there and say that they're driving him crazy, but maybe he's not getting the sleep that he gets when he's on the road. And he's more awake and alert. I'm trying to come up with a rational explanation as to why a guy is so good in one place and so not good in somewhere else.
So I'm afforded the opportunity to work from home. It's great. My wife gave birth to our second child back at the end of March on opening day, actually, Phillies Rangers. Yeah. And I've been very fortunate to be in the house with them all spring, all summer. Anytime she needs a hand, I can just run upstairs real quick and then come back to the computer. I get to see them all the time. It's great. It's a blessing. But this week, we're having this bizarre end of summer heat wave here where we're going to go 95, 95, 95, 96.
Yep.
So the in-laws have a place down between Cape May and Wildwood, and she's taking the kids this week down the shore because we can't do 4 days in a row in the house. I mean, it just won't work. And this is a real busy work week for me. Football's coming back, sports betting, marketing, all that stuff. I'm probably going to have my best week of work here just because they'll be at the shore. So that kind of ties back to what you're talking about with JT Realmuto. And by the way, I'm going to miss them. I'm not thrilled about it, but in terms of work production, it's probably going to be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we always forget. And I every once in a while, I do like to remind people that these athletes are humans like us who have lives like us and who deal with some of the same crap that we deal with, even though they're multimillionaires. Okay. They just do. And sometimes home life is fantastic. It's awesome. And, I'm not trying to sit there and try and say that it's not a good environment for them. But, when you're a dad and you got 4 little kids, you can't leave, and you're home, you can't leave your wife to deal with that all the time. I mean, that's insanity. So he's probably a good dad, wants to be involved, wants to be there with the kids. Hey, that can take its toll. That's not a joke. I'm not trying to make light of it. It absolutely can take its toll. I'm not saying it's the reason.
I'm smiling because I find it to be incredibly relatable. It's like, I'm a 206 hitter, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. So here I come, It's a new marketing campaign. That could be some synergy there between Major League Baseball and the hospitality industry.
I'm just trying to I'm trying to come up with a reason because it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense otherwise. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the other story, and I know Matt Gelb wrote a story on The Athletic with ads about it.
I love that we say that all the time with
great.
ads.
It's my favorite. He wrote about Alec Bohm, obviously makes a terrible error on Friday night. It's just a play that he has to make. It's a play that, to his credit, he's made pretty much all the time this season, and it's a play he's going to have to make again. And it came at a horrible, horrible time where it cost him a game. 3-run score. They had what would have been a great win turned into a horrible loss. And you worried in the past about what that might mean for Alec Bohm moving forward. We've seen him wear his failures. We've seen things kind of snowball against him. and sort of spiraled to a degree. And I wondered, like, you see him make the play or not make the play on Friday night, and he just looked beside himself. Like, you saw the body language, he like the hands on his head. He couldn't believe it. And there was part of me that's like, well, this is going to be interesting now, because when things are going well, it's kind of easier to keep them moving in that positive direction. But given how much has been made about his past struggles and his turnaround, I did wonder, like, are we going to see this now roll into Saturday, roll into the next 10 games? So I thought it was encouraging that he had a hit on Saturday night. Obviously, the massive home run ties the game yesterday. And it sort of just looks like he was able to brush it off and move on past it. And I don't know if I don't know if you look at that and say, yeah, you can really learn something about him this quickly. Like, we know for sure that he's not carrying it with him, but it sure looks like it. And for me, that's a big deal, because he hasn't been as productive offensively lately. He went through it a little bit. And then you throw in that error in such a terrible spot. What do you think? I mean, like, what do you see from him? Like, do you really think that this is a player that has sort of turned the corner? And I'll just give you one more here to set you up a little bit. But you look at his numbers, and one thing we've always asked is, hey, he's a corner infielder and he just hasn't hit for enough power. Like, he's probably going to hit 20 home runs. I know he's not a kid, but, like, is it possible that he's evolving and trending towards a potential 25, 30 home run type guy that can hit 280 plus and drive in 100 runs and kind of be the guy the Phillies thought they were getting when they drafted him 3rd overall? Like, is there a little bit more meat on the bone with this guy?
Yeah, there's a lot here, Bob. So I'll answer it this way. I'll say two things. One, I think he's a maturing player and maybe has matured emotionally beyond where he was in the past. Like, there was a time when that error would have eaten him up and it would have bugged him for a while, right? So the fact that he does come out and right away and get a hit on Saturday, get the home run yesterday, like, that shows a maturity that has come about with experience over the last few years. It also speaks volumes of that clubhouse, that they don't let a mistake or an error or a base running gaff or anything get them, right? I mean, like, when things were blowing up Saturday night, the Brewers take a 7-2 lead, and then this didn't result in a run, but then there was that pop-up right to left field that Turner and Schwarber, probably should have been Turner's ball, but neither of them were calling each other off, and it lands and it falls in for a bloop double, right? When that happens, like, you can just, like, all right, yeah, this just not our night. Game's going to go away. And yet they come, all right, no worries. We'll go out there and we'll keep trying to come back. And then you get Turner at the plate with runners at second and third and 2 outs in the 9th inning to tie the game with a single. Like, I mean, like, that's what I mean by that. So that says a lot about every player in that locker room and how Bohm has kind of matured into the person that he is within that culture. But do I think he can be what you just asked, a 25, 30 home run guy? I've always felt 25 was kind of where he was going to be. But it was interesting. Kyle Schwarber last week, we were talking about Alec Bohm, and he said, I think he could get to 30, 35. Like, he thinks within the next couple of years, he could be that kind of power hitter. And I was a little taken aback by it. I'm like, all right, can I see a season maybe where he gets to 30? Maybe 2 seasons. Like, I don't see it as a consistent thing. But then I think about it, could he get there maybe first? Well, yeah, he's going to, like you said, he's probably going to hit 20 this year. So can I see a season where he gets a little on a hot streak and hits 30? Yeah. But I don't think he's going to be consistently a 30 home run guy. But I do think he's going to be a consistent 280 hitter and a consistent, as long as he's on a good offense like this, a consistent RBI guy who can be in that 100 RBI neighborhood each season. So that, if that's what you're going to give me, if you're going to tell me Alec Bohm is 280, 20, 100 season after season, I'll sign up for it. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, he already has a career high in doubles. He's probably going to finish in the low 30s. He already has a career high in home runs. He's got 16. He's on pace for 19. Not absurd to think that he finishes with 20 plus there. He's already got a career high in runs batted in. He's on pace for 99. He may eclipse 100. He has a career best walk rate, a career low strikeout rate. That's where I start to look at it and I say it's not just the counting stats, which are certainly very important, but then you start to look at some of these deeper numbers where like he's a little bit more selective. He's swinging at better pitches. He's walking more. Like I just wonder, like, is this a guy who, especially when you consider I want to be careful how I say this, but like he really went through it mentally, right? Like that was the story of the 2022 season. Is a player that was the runner-up in National League Rookie of the Year. Then he's demoted, and then he went through hell last year. Like there's been a lot of turbulence in terms of, I think, probably his mindset of like, can I do this at the level that I'm capable of? And now that he's sort of gotten his footing and you see these numbers starting to creep up, like that's where I wonder about the ceiling with him, because it is all trending in a positive direction. Where if you said, what's Alec Bohm like in 2024? Is there some scenario where he's hitting in the 280s? The OPS probably sitting somewhere around 800. He hits 25 home runs. He hits 30, 35 doubles and plays functional defense at 2 corner infield spots for you. Like that's a pretty valuable player. And I do wonder if there's a little bit more of a jump. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I'll tell you what the most impressive thing about him is, and this is why I think that there's going to be even a little bit more growth in his game. I shouldn't say ever, but have you in recent years seen a player who, when they swing, they rarely foul the ball? It's like when he swings and makes contact, he's putting it in play. The guy is never fouling pitches off. Like he uses the whole field and he puts the ball in play all the time. I guarantee, and I don't know if there's a way of tracking this, if this is within Baseball Savant or StatCast or anything. I guarantee you he fouls off amongst the fewest pitches in the sport. And considering his strikeout rate is low, that tells you a little bit of something. And it tells me that he's got a really nice approach at the plate and that he studies the pitchers. He knows what's coming his way. Like you said, his walk rate is going up. He's had a lot of statistical trends going in the right direction. And I think that's why that there's still more room for him. I really do. I don't think
value for $784,000 this season. He's not a free agent until after the 2026 season, which I don't like to talk about future things when you're in the middle of a season. But I mean, how many times can we talk about the jam-packed National League wildcard race? So let me just throw this one out to you while we're on the subject of Alec Bohm.
Yeah.
Because I think it's something that we will talk about when this thing is done at the end of the year. Phillies, I think, can go one of 2 ways. Well, one of 3 ways. They don't have to do anything. They can just let this roll into next year. And, you know, they got a lot of high-priced guys, and Alec Bohm can just come back. Like, it's just an arbitration year. They figure it out, and you move forward. But I almost wonder, given what he is and some of the upside that he still has, like, do you go the Atlanta Braves route here and say, let's get this guy locked up now? Like, let's see if we can save a little bit of money and do one of these deals where industry people look at it and say, damn, they got a pretty solid player here now locked up for the next 6-7 years, and they didn't have to pay crazy open free agent market type value for the player. Like, would you consider doing something like that? And then conversely, you know, I think we have to see how this all plays out, but let's say Aaron Nola walks and we know what the starting pitching market looks like this winter. Like, is there some world where you say, like, he's young, he's pretty damn good, he's getting better? Like, is there some team that comes in and says, okay, we'll do this deal with you? Like, I always feel like I'm advocating for the trade of Alec Bohm, and I'm not. In fact, I hope they don't do it. Like, I'd be upset if they did it. But, like, I just think that you have a younger, valuable piece here that is now under team control for 3 more years beyond this one. Like, he's such an interesting player in terms of what he can still be and what he's becoming. And then when you tie in the overall value of that, like, to me, it almost seems ridiculous to just kind of let him play out the arbitration years. Like, let's either lock this guy up and make him a core piece, or let's find a way to bring back a haul that takes a team that's right on the verge of potentially being a champion and going all in. Like, doesn't it kind of feel like that he's the one, and that's the reason why I always bring up trades with him, because to me, he's like the one guy other than maybe like Bryson Stott, who really represents like some unique value.
Yeah. I think we get to that point eventually with him. I'm not sure it's this offseason. And I
Maybe
say
like
that
2 years left. Yeah.
yeah, well, I think I say that because I think that the Phillies are going to have bigger fish to fry this offseason than worrying about locking up Bohm long term. I think that's something we can talk about a year from now. Right. I think that's a time when we can sit there and say, yeah, maybe this is the offseason to do it, because you have to really see how they're going to put together their starting rotation in the coming years. Right. Let's be honest. With Harper and Turner back being Turner now, you have two superstars in the sport. And when you have two superstars in the sport on your team, plus a very good supporting cast around them, your window to win a championship is the next 3 to 5 years, right? So in the next 3 to 5 years, you have to really have something there that you think can win, especially on the pitching front. With Nola being a free agent now, and Wheeler's got 1 year left, right? And then yeah, you got Taijuan Walker, okay, whatever. But beyond that, Andrew Painter was supposed to be here pitching this year, and now he's not pitching till 2025. So I think that changes the calculus a little bit of what the Phillies' plans might be going forward. With that said, I think you're going to have to really consider your rotation this offseason. And when you do that, and you have to think about the money that you're going to have to spend and commit to that rotation, signing Alec Bohm to an extension doesn't really make as much sense.
Right.
And that's the only reason I say that.
Do you think that you're also in a spot where you'd like to see one more year? Like, hey, his progress has not exactly been linear. Great stuff, super encouraging stuff so far here, but do you almost kind of want to see a 24 season before you say, okay,
well,
now I truly believe it?
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, look, the reason the Phillies are where they are this year is because Alec Bohm, Bryson Stott, and Brandon Marsh have all taken very big steps forward offensively.
No doubt.
All three. Okay. So that's good news. But we've also seen guys go out and have a good year and then revert back to what they were beforehand. So in that vein, I want to see all three of those guys come back next year and be at least this again. And you say, okay, because if they're at least this again, you say, all right, well, this might be just what they are, but that's good. It's a good player. It's a nice piece on a good team. But there's also still a possibility that they're even better than what they've been this year. That this is part of that progression, right? So yes, I'd like to see one more year from all three before I decide if any of them are going to get additional money in a contract. So I just think that the starting rotation, if we're looking beyond 23, the starting rotation is priority number one of the offseason. And who's going to be part of it going forward? Do you dare re-sign Nola? Because there's no other. Look at the other free agents that are out there. There's nothing.
I mean, the free agency is terrible, but like you're saying it, like 24 is an all-in year for the Phillies. Like when you look at Harper prime, Turner prime, Schwarber, Castellanos coming towards Schwarber's year 3 of a 4-year deal, Castellanos year 3 of a 5-year deal. Like this is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
For me, it was always about like 24. Like when they did all this, I was like, 24 is probably like 23, 24 are the years.
Yeah.
You got Wheeler coming up beyond that. You don't know. Right? Like, and their rotation.
Do you extend him?
Yeah. I mean, do you extend him? Wheeler, Walker, Sanchez, Suarez. Like those are the 4 guys right now that you have in 2024. And like, does Mick Abel figure into that? Like a guy like McGarry to me has been so wildly inconsistent that like I'm not slotting him into this rotation. I know Painter was supposed to be the centerpiece of the thing, but now he's not. So you've got to adjust. Like you can't just say, oh, tough luck for us. We'll try to piece it together with 4 Taijuan Walkers. Like you can't do it.
Can't.
Like you need another horse at the top of this thing.
And the thing of it is, and this is the other thing about it, I talked about this with Kevin Cooney on 97.5 yesterday. You may want to move on from Aaron Nola, and that's fine. But where do you go? Because the only other pitcher. So here's the other thing that where I say the calculus has changed. Shohei Ohtani having to get Tommy John and now not being able to pitch till 2025 changes the free agent market. So even if you were thinking about bringing back Nola, it changes probably his value because of what's out there. It's him and Blake Snell. That's it. I mean, the rest of I mean, Sonny Gray, I think might be the other one that maybe comes into play a little bit because he's having a really good year for Minnesota. But that's it. That's your free agent pitching market next year. So what do you do? Do you replace Nola with Sonny Gray?
Well, I'll tell you what.
But he's older. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's weird. It's like you don't know. It's so I think that the pitcher. Do you make a trade for a pitcher? Like, there's a lot that's going to come into this, and Dombrowski is going to have his hands full with fixing this rotation for 24 and 25.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I mean, with Sonny Gray, he's going to be 34 next season. And
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Fair or not, because every year is different and every situation is different. But like, I watched what he was for a full season with the Yankees.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was an East Coast thing or a big market thing or what it was, but it was horrible. So that alone for a team that is big market, everyone freaks out over every game. I'm good. I don't think I want to take that shot.
Right.
Like, Snell's interesting, but again, what's the years? What's the number? He's not a guy that's going to give you the innings. I mean, he's a 5-6 inning and out guy. So,
he's another lefty, and you have two other lefties already kind of in the rotation, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's sort of like an imperfect fit, and there's not a clear solution available via free agency, which is why, to be honest with you, I kind of floated this idea with Bohm. Just because, or maybe you do it with prospects. It's not to say that you would have to use someone like Alec Bohm, but to me, if they're going to not do Nola and they need a guy in that like number 2 type role, it might have to come via trade. So that's why I sort of float the idea out there. It's going to be really interesting to kind of see how it unfolds, but certainly there's more pressing things happening here in the immediate future. Before we get out of here, I want to talk a little bit about this Padres team because it's interesting. They win 3 out of 4 against the Giants over the weekend, deal the Giants a pretty good blow to their own playoff hopes. But in the process, San Diego over the last 3 days has moved from 8.5 games out of the final wild card spot to 5.5 games out of the final wild card spot. And when you look at playoff probability, they went from 0.5% to 1.9%. So still not really optimistic about their ability to leap the likes of the Diamondbacks, the Giants, the Reds, the Marlins. There's 4 teams that they'd have to go over to get that last wild card spot.
Aren't they all tied, by the way, right now?
Yeah, it really truly is chaos. And I know that people don't love necessarily that extra wild card spot, but man, like, it's making the sport much more interesting down the stretch here. Point is, I don't think that San Diego's making the playoffs, but if they have any hope, they probably have to sweep the Phillies to like really kind of get themselves back into this. So here we are. The Phillies have an opportunity to basically kill the Padres season 2 straight years. I look at tonight's pitching matchup. I don't love what we've seen from Taijuan Walker here recently, especially in the first inning, as we've talked about at great length. Rich Hill, though, for the Padres, who... Like, come on. The Phillies, to me, have an opportunity to essentially just end the Padres tonight. Like, that's the way I'm looking at the first game of this 3-game series. You can end the Padres tonight.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think that you're right. I think that this is the last stand for the Padres. They look at this and say, we have to at least win the series to still have a shot. I mean, they're what? 5? They're 5 back or 5.5?
5.5 back.
Yeah, 5.5 with 26 games to go. That's not an easy thing to make up, especially when you have to jump 4 teams. But the thing is 2 of the teams that you have to jump, you're facing, like you're playing them, and down the stretch they play the Diamondbacks and the Giants. So it's really only you control what you can control, and then hope a couple of the other teams drop off a little bit. But yes, they have to at least win this year. So the Padres are really up against it. And you're right. If there's a game that you want to just get out there and beat up on a bad pitcher, Rich Hill's a soft tossing lefty, probably at the end of this is probably the last month of his career. And the Phillies faced him before when he was in Pittsburgh before he got traded to San Diego. Phillies lost that game.
Yes, they did.
In extra innings, I believe it was 6-4. But they actually weren't terrible against Hill. I expect to see a very similar lineup to what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, it was actually a missed opportunities game. They walked 3 times, had 5 hits against them in 5 innings.
Yeah.
And they just didn't. It was like kind of one of those annoying late July Phillies losses where you're like, dude, how many opportunities can you blow here?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think this is a game that you just go out there and you go get it and you crush the Padres' soul in the first game of the series. Because I'll tell you what, if the Padres lose tonight, and yeah, it's an afternoon game for them, but it's evening here. They lose this game, and any one of those other teams are victorious, and now all of a sudden they're 6.5 out with 25. They're done. That's it. They're cooked. So. Yeah, you could crush their soul by winning this game. So it's kind of an important game in that regard, more so than the entirety of the series. I think Bryson Stott might get a seat tonight. The
He
last time,
probably needs one.
yeah, I mean
moment.
he's scuffling. I think I texted you yesterday. I think he's 5 for his last 37, one for 17. And last time they faced Rich Hill, he was out of the lineup. So I have a feeling he won't be in the lineup tonight. The question is, who is in the lineup? Will they play Sosa at second base? Sosa's actually been a little bit better lately. Do they dare go another shot with Rodolfo Castro at second base because he supposedly hits lefties? I don't know how that's going to play out, but I also think you're going to see either Pache or Rojas in center field again tonight. As a matter of fact, if Harper can play first base, you might see both of them in the lineup, one in left and one in center. So that's a possibility too. But think about that. I mean, you could be having a bottom third of your lineup tonight of Castro, Pache, Rojas.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's so this time of year is awesome, right? Like, and you get the NFL coming back, you get the college football coming back, and like I'm all in on all of that. I watched a ton of college football this weekend. I can't wait for the NFL this weekend. But man, like you get the Phillies every night pushing towards a playoff spot, and then you look around, and because you have all these teams involved in the wild card race, there's a number of games that you're like, I'm going to be all over these games, like Giants Cubs this week. That's awesome. You get the Dodgers and Marlins. Like that's going to be super revealing, I think, in a lot of ways. Like if Miami can survive that series, maybe they get into the back end of September, really pushing for a spot here. Like you look all around the league and like Seattle and Cincinnati, like the Reds kind of got up off the mat here over the last 7 days. Like, can they make one final push and kind of get back into this thing? They're going to have to beat a really good Mariners team this week. Like it's really cool looking at the schedule and seeing 4, 5, 6 games every night that really have a true impact on how this thing's going to shake out.
Yeah, this is. I think this is a week that for the Diamondbacks. I mean, they have the Rockies while everybody else that they're battling with is playing a good team. So like this is their opportunity to try and maybe create a little bit of space, go out and just beat up on a bad team, and then see what the other teams do, and maybe you get a game or 2 games up on teams. And give yourself a little bit of breathing room. So for Arizona, I think it's kind of an important 3-game series. So yeah, I think that this is going to be it's a great time. You're right. I mean, there's so many games that matter, especially in the National League at this time, and it's going to be fun to just watch that play out, watch the American League West race play out, see who gets that last wild card in the American League. The Guardians are suddenly back in the AL Central race. They picked up all the leftovers from the Angels.
The scraps from the Angels. They sold, and then a month later they're in. You know, what a weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
maybe
great.
They just needed to change the chemistry. Maybe they just needed to, they needed all that roster turnover to make it work.
It's great
stuff. That's certainly worth keeping an eye on as well. All right. Well, due to some time limitations that I have here, why don't we get to one last thing and wrap this thing up?
So one last thing was actually something we kind of touched on. It was funny because you brought it up, and I was like, I should save this, but I want to kind of throw a few names at you. So we were, I didn't think we were going to talk about 2024 in the process of this
you never know where I'm gonna go. You never know.
But that's okay. So I was thinking about it. I was saying, look, since the free agent market is not exciting, who could potentially be available via a trade in the off season? And so you think about starting pitchers that could be available, and you look at who are going to be the free agents in 2025. The starting pitching free agency list in 2025 is unfreaking real in comparison to 2024. Yeah, there's some big names that are old that you're probably not going to be interested in, like a Max Scherzer, for example, right? I mean, no one's going to be interested in that. But there are some guys, and there's going to be other free agents. Are going to be, Garrett Cole has an opt out in his deal, which is kind of an interesting one. Will somebody take a chance there? Obviously, Wheeler's on that list. But here, I'm going to throw some names from guys who are on teams that maybe would be willing to trade a starting pitcher. That you could then, maybe put in and plug into a number 2 role. By the way, also on that list of free agents next year, Corbin Burns is on that list next year. Freddie Peralta is on that list next year, although he has an option. And then you got Shane Bieber on that list, Max Fried on that list. I mean, there's some names next year that are going to be out there. Walker Buehler, coming back off of his injury. Brandon Woodruff, they're all free agents in 25, which is crazy. So that year is going to be a lot different, right? But this is what you had, and this is why I think that this is such an important offseason for the Phillies. Here are the guys that you might have to consider, and you tell me if you're interested. You interested in Marcus Stroman?
No.
Okay.
Not like flatly no, for multiple reasons. I don't buy his resurgence. There's injury concerns. I've heard, I'm just out. I'll leave it at that.
Yep. Okay. You interested in Tyler Glass now?
I don't trust his ability to stay healthy.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to go with guys.
Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I'm just out.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to go with guys that are a little bit younger, because there are older guys on here too that you can do like a 1 year kind of thing with. I'm avoiding those names. Interested in German Marquez, Colorado.
Like as a top of the rotation type?
No, we're talking about a number 2, right? You're looking at a guy. If you're not going to re-sign Nola, and the free agent market kind of sucks, and you need a number 2 pitcher, because you have Wheeler next year. This is what's going to be available, via trade, possibly.
Yeah. Sort of an unknown after this year, hasn't really pitched, but there's obviously some upside there. He wasn't great last year. I mean, he's okay. He's a guy. He's a guy. He's a guy.
This is what I'm trying to get to. Like, it's like, this is why I think that they're going to re-sign him.
Well, the guy that's interesting to me is Burns, because
he's a free agent.
Yeah, and he was not thrilled with the Brewers this offseason.
Yeah,
it creates, I think, an interesting dynamic here. He's 28 years old. He's awesome. Like, that's a guy, I find a way. Like, find me a way.
Well, the question I have for you is this: do the Brewers move on from any of these guys? Because their top 3 starters are all free agents in 25. So are they trading one of them this offseason? If so, then I think that you have a legit.
Well, I think you do, because I don't think that the Brewers are going to pay for Corbin Burns. Like, I really don't. So it's almost like, let's go get, if you're Milwaukee, what you're constantly trying to do is remain competitive while you're losing some of these high profile guys. Like, to me, this is like the perfect spot for Milwaukee to try to make a deal and get a massive haul. And if they don't think they're going to commit $30 million plus per year to a guy, then this is where you get off. Don't wait until August, do it this off season.
As a matter of fact, as I'm looking at it, they have 5 starters that are free agents in 25. It's Burns.
I would definitely keep an eye on them this off season, because they know they're not going to bring all these guys back.
Burns, Woodruff, Freddie Peralta, although he's the one that has an option, and then also Eric Lauer and Adrian Hauser are all free agents, unrestricted free agents going into 2025. That's crazy. That's crazy. So anyway, it's just another point. If you, them aside, or if you go with an old pitcher, somebody that's 37 and above, unless you're doing that, you might be re-signing Aaron Nola. I'm just saying. That's kind of where things have fallen.
I really don't. If we do another 6 weeks of this and he continues to struggle and then he bombs in the postseason, I just don't think that he's coming back.
It's a whole different animal, right? If he does, but
I think you're in there's a need, but we have to find a change of scenery type of situation there. All right. Well, that will do it for the latest episode of Crossed Up. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at AntSandPhilly. You can follow me at Bob_Wankel. You can follow the show account at Up Phillies. Make sure that you're checking us out on
Oh,
YouTube.
I put the wrong one up there. Look at that. I put the wrong
That's
stuff up
okay.
there.
Yeah, at least you got the newsletter up there. Boom.
Look
You
at that. I wrote this
Oh,
one up for you
all
just so
right.
that you could put it up there so you could
Yeah,
promote
there
the
you go. So if
newsletter.
you're watching on YouTube right now, you're getting all the correct information. I might just slow play it, let it the full scroll go here. Yeah, there you go. It's very nice. All right. Well, we will be back on Friday. Phillies out in San Diego this week trying to end the Padres season. We'll talk to you soon.